please allow me to introduce your moderator for this panel, Mr. K. Ramakrishnan, who is the Chief Executive of the Skill Development Mission at Larsen and Toubro, also known as LNT. Ram sir is a graduate in mechanical engineering from VJTI Mumbai.
So, good morning and a very happy Women's Day to the distinguished panel comprising Nidhi, Lalita, Joyita, and Dr. Geeti Lakshmi. It's your day, ladies, and I actually wonder what I am doing out here. So that's why they have given me the role of a moderator. So the stage is all yours. I am only going to just facilitate the discussions. I think it is very important to understand today that we are coming out of a pandemic which has actually flattened the world like never before. But it has also thrown up new opportunities. It has made, I would say, the world, I just said it has flattened the world, but in a positive sense, it has flattened the world in the sense of enabling communications across countries, across cities, across people in a much more effective way because you couldn't travel out. So out of this adverse situation, we are seeing opportunities. So it's an opportune moment that we are celebrating Women's Day today. And the topic for this esteemed distinguished panel is the Sustainable Development Goals. And while the Sustainable Development Goal number 5 talks of gender equality, I think there is a thread running through the entire 17 goals, which speaks about emancipation of women, empowerment of women, increased participation of women in the workforce, which is determined by the factor called FLFP, female labor force participation. It's a little sad to note that India is at a very low level of about 23%, and the world average is about 47%. So against the background of this context, the country coming out of the pandemic and maybe on a recovery path, which could become a V-shaped recovery path, it's an opportune moment to really introspect and look at how we can really make women participation in various areas of the workforce much more involved and higher. And there was a request from Archana that I should introduce the panel members also. So before we go further, can I give a brief introduction about each of you? I think the profile of each of our panel members is very illustrious. They come with rich experience, great background, and a commitment to give back to society. So I begin with Nidhi Pundir. She's the director at HCL Foundation, which is very well known as a part of the HCL Technologies organization, and having done very path-breaking work in the area of social development. She holds a master's degree in hospital and health administration from IIHMR University, Jaipur, and an MPhil from the Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences. She has spent more than 22 years of her professional life in executing human rights of communities, the right to health, education, livelihood, and protection from violence. The second member is Mrs. Lalita Sachdeva. She is a partnership lead in UNICEF, the UN-based organization. She is part of a core team at UNICEF that is incubating a multi-stakeholder platform called YUVA, Generation Unlimited in India, where she leads strategic partnerships. At her work in UNICEF and with other development organizations, she has been involved in bringing together core competencies of partners and development organizations for innovative solutions in the field of social development. The third panel member is Joyita Das. She's the program manager, corporate citizenship and corporate affairs group, IBM. She's a lead in the education and skilling initiatives at CSR in the same organization, has a unique experience of over 20 years of working with government and non-governmental organizations. She is also as an entrepreneurial streak in her. She's a problem solver and has done significant work with impact. And the fourth member of the panel is Dr. Geeti Lakshmi Mohapatra, Department of Economics and Finance, BITS Pilani. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Economics and Finance. She has obtained her master's degree in economics from University of Hyderabad and PhD from Utkal University. So, ladies and gentlemen, here is the distinguished panel in front of you. I think, Nidhi, I was told that you wanted to show a video. So possibly we could begin with you and the video that you wanted to share with the audience.
Right. Don't follow any order. Thank you so much, Mr. Ram. And no, first of all, a very happy International Women's Day to not only women but also everyone. I would say men and women, girls and boys, and everyone around. You know, it's such a, I would say, it's such a moment each year that we kind of recognize this day in various ways. At HCL Foundation, of course, a whole lot of work is going on, and we pretty much see gender as a cross-cutting and, I would say cross-sectional across the programs. I think I can maybe start with the message, and then when you have questions, Mr. Ram, we can answer more specifically.
Sure.
But coming to the Sustainable Development Goal agenda, I think we are talking about, people, planet, partnerships. I think today is not the day to sit and make any negative remark. I would only be very appreciative about all the efforts that are happening all over the globe, be it, the global workforce agenda we talk about, be it the general global community's participation there. Also, government's efforts are much appreciated. And in India, I think we are a little ahead in the game with voting rights coming to women much earlier than many developed countries. So I would set the tone more as a celebration kind of a tone today, rather than putting critiques on table, because that we anyhow do through the year, and we make very instrumental strategies to overcome it. But today is the day. Let's celebrate the success of women. Few things I can highlight is that India has the maximum number of women pilots. We can be very proud of it. We have women in the mainstream sport from India. We have women in parliament. We have, major workforce of women as farmers, teachers, doctors, nurses, ANMs, ASHA workers, Anganwadi workers. Just imagine whether the country will run without the contributions they are making, and also the huge workforce which is often not talked about is them as homemakers, which actually contribute to rearing up, giving birth to the human capital per se. So I think today is the day. Let's celebrate our success, and therefore I had a quick video. I don't know if it's with the organizers here to maybe start the day, how young women, young girls from very difficult circumstances have made it to the state level and national level sports, and are mainstream today.
So I want to ask you one question, and that is, do you think the coronavirus outbreak has enhanced the inequalities that existed for women, or has it had an effect that is the opposite? What are your views on this?
Well, I think it's early to comment, because some research would need to be done in order to really put some facts on the table. But what is very clearly, what is visible and observations that we are making is that as far as women losing, especially in the unskilled sector, losing their employment is concerned, that has really been a very high percentage. Just to kind of give you a little bit of snapshot from a survey that we conducted under our HCL Uday program, which is basically a program to address the urban poverty. There were more than 70% people at one point of time who lost their employment, and within which more than 50-60% were women, especially the ones who work as domestic helps, or the one who worked, on the fishing coastline. I mean, a whole lot of work which they did. Also, the handicraft and everything got impacted.
Okay, thank you. I will move on to Miss Lalita Sachdev from UNICEF. Lalita ji, I will start with a question for you. Uh, One is that, do you feel that the gender-based social barriers that are there today in Indian society, which hampers the participation of women in activities you would like them to participate, these barriers are obviously disrupting their participation. How do you think they can be enhanced, they can be mitigated, and their condition improved through community efforts?
I think, I mean, we all know it's not always only about schemes and programs which actually get young girls into the mainstream. It's always a lot about community outreach as well. For the longest, I think a lot of our gender programming in the country is focused only on girls, and the need to try and focus it on parents, on boys in the community is equally as high. Primarily because of their negotiation power or their agency has never really been strengthened as much as well. So the need to skill them on soft skills, on being more financially independent, having role models locally, to really also probably ensuring that the impact that we have on gender norms within the education system by the content that we put together, or even in advertising from companies by the content that we put together, and in multiple folds needs to be really checked as well. So when we are trying to really exasperate these gender divides by really the kind of classes that we have for young girls in school. I think somebody needs to go on mute. I think Mr. Ramakrishnan, probably, if you could go on mute because it's echoing my voice, sorry. So I think there is a very, very, very strong need for us to really look at every piece of work that we do with communities from the lens of gender. I mean, we're probably the only country, even if you look at the very basic of under 5 mortality or neonatal mortality, we're probably the only country where neonatal mortality for girls is higher than boys, and that's really just more around social norms. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world. So clearly, the need for us to build the agency of a girl and a woman from the point when she's born, working with the community, with the families, with boys in the community, and at large, I think of the impact that each one of us have from our work on the communities. We do need to be very, very mindful of what we are doing there and work together on enabling it and building agency of girls. So you're on mute, sir.
There's another, sorry, thank you, Lalita ji, very enlightening. And another question which is connected with what we spoke with Nidhi with respect to the pandemic. And as you all know, that the pandemic has led to a big shift to online learning, online communication, etc. Do you think that will have an impact on the way we can train women in terms of skilling and also enable them to have their livelihoods? Will online be a platform that will enable them to cross some of the social barriers that are there in the country today?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the optimistic in me sort of says yes, because it gives a lot of flexibility to girls and women, essentially, whether it is around learning, skilling, or even taking jobs, because no matter what, the burden of household work is unduly resting on a woman as well. And that is probably a barrier we'll cross much later. So very clearly, in theory, I mean, if you look at the possibility of remote jobs, even from larger corporates like yours, can be much higher. And that's a realization that we've had fast-tracked during the pandemic as well. For that, again, there are few indicators and few things that we will really need to try and find a way of working. For instance, the digital divide. It is much, much higher for girls. I mean, girls have much lesser access to mobile phones or internet. And we saw that during the pandemic too, even when it comes to digital learning, girls had much lesser time available on mobile phones and devices compared to boys. And hence, the pandemic certainly has exacerbated the digital divide for sure. And that clearly needs to be a priority, I think, as we move forward, if we are looking at equal opportunities, especially with the flexibility now that digital can build for us, not just on learning, but also on job, on gig economy, and many other ways. So there is an opportunity and there is also a threat, like I think in most things. If we can actually really counter the threat, the opportunities could be really big.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll move on to the next member of the panel, Joyita. Again, I may start with a question for you. Uh, uh, do you think there are gender biases in education and skill development that disrupt the growth of women? And would you like to look at encouraging women to take to vocational education more than going to the traditional education system? And when I'm asking this question, the focus is going to be more on rural and women from the underprivileged section. So that is my question to Joyita to open up her part of the discussion.
Thank you, Ramji. As far as this particular day is concerned, many things have been said, like other esteemed panelists have, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of reality that has been thrown in front of us. Well, was it not there? It was. And we might have been, pretty certain about certain preconceived notions, what this day means for us and what, in education, the gender bias has been, and it has been constantly evolving. For example, I can really think that during the 1900s, the initial theme was, equality and equity at workplace, and then it shifted a little bit from becoming a symbol of peace in protest of the, World War. In the 2000s, there was a further evolution, in focusing on recognizing extraordinary accomplishments. And now, of course, with a lot of corporates doing this event. But what stood apart was the collective individualism to influence change. School systems, most teachers, and I think over the weekend, what struck me, what rather impacted me deeply was this Deccan Herald, article. I don't know if some of you have seen, but it talks about a very, very regressive practice in India and in a southern state of Raichur district in Karnataka, mainly, and a couple of neighboring districts. And the social, financial, economic sort of, disregard, disrespect, inaccess, inequality, it's just draconian, added with the draconian policies and the social norms. However, that particular lady who was subjected to a lot of, struggles, became one of the teacher, or became one of the lead in putting together a community effort in sensitizing so much and bringing together a self-help group, a bank, through microfinance, and getting that entire, barrier down. And that started from education. Now that is in one, one aspect, which a reality which we cannot, go away from. On the other aspects, we see that celebrating women in different aspects and right from high school. So, whether it is in different walks of life or at home, but, I was just thinking that if we really break down to one thing, probably it is how we are made. And that's not a man or a woman, but how us, through all these different experiences in our life, bottom line is, as individuals, how do we behave in our inclusion, in our focus, in our undiscriminating focus on, various themes across homes, families, schools, colleges, workforce. And most importantly, I think, with that reflection and determination that the future emphasis should be on inclusive leadership, and it starts from home. So that's pretty much what it is. But I think from a corporate standpoint, specifically, to the question that you said, that, women in vocation in different fields, the findings are sobering, right? And we all know some of the data, the number of women in leadership pipeline. We work very closely with our governments. But from a recent, IBM Institute of Business Value study, we are kind of working on these 4 pillars. And there are 4 ways to drive sustainable progress in gender equity in skilling and vocation. And they are very quickly, I kind of go through them. Pair bold thinking with big commitments. We're talking about all our individual CSR efforts, but it has to be strategic leadership and bold thinking, with a great community effort and CSR network. Of course, use of technology to accelerate performance at every level, whether it is bringing in women in science, women in technology, women in AI. Today we have every single example and leadership in different aspects or walks of life. Then there is, of course, any application of all of that in any specific crisis related interventions. For example, organizations can support more flexible work schedules and provide additional benefits like child backup care and so on and so forth. This is more from an organization point of view. Similarly, in villages, different vocations are also encouraged primarily to make sure that the women are out there in the field or in as teachers mainly, and different aspects or trades of vocation. So the fourth one and the final one is to create a culture of intention and insist on making room. And small interventions every day, but to sow that grassroots level change, to drive that true range change. And the real change, I think, starts from all of us, whether we are individuals, corporates, industry partners, government partners, and of course to work with our NPO or our non-governmental partners to form that ecosystem for that change. So lots of skilling and vocational programs and trades out there between Ministry of Skill and NSDC. There's a dime a dozen out there, but it is that last mile which makes them either start something on their own or push them into a workforce environment. And with this last example, I'll stop. There is this girl who's a first generation learner, and when she came into one of our skilling programs with Ministry of Skill, she was really hesitant, very, 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 scared, of course, doesn't even know how to speak. And there, through all these different emerging technologies, exposure to various communication and soft skills, today she is really leading in one of her mid-sized organization and hoping that she will definitely be a part of women in AI field at at some point of time. So with that, Ram, I'll hand it over back to you and open it up for the other panelists to contribute points.
Joyita, thanks a lot. And I must tell you that your thoughts resonated so well because you answered a question that I didn't ask also. So that's very good. That shows that you are in line with what is the thinking in terms of what we need to do to really empower women, to reskill them and look at them in terms of new generation technologies like you talked about, AI, etc. I think it's very important also to share such success stories like you mentioned across the length and breadth of the company so that it motivates others. So I'll go to the
absolutely,
next,
sir. And as CSR professionals, as senior government officials with industry partners, government partners, I think it is each one's responsibility to make sure what we do and bring in that ecosystem for both equally for girls and boys. And equality at work and equal opportunity starts even before they come to the workforce. So providing that equal opportunity is something that we need to do together.
Fine. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Lovely. We'll go to Dr. Geeti Lakshmi. And Dr. Geeti Lakshmi, I think you have a PPT to share.
Yes, sir.
So you could start with that. Then I have 1 or 2 questions for you.
What I am going to present is related to the topic that I've decided is empowering women through skilling to address the various sustainable development goals. Okay. So before I go, let me quote the statement which was given by Vivekanand. What exactly he has said: there is no chance for the welfare of the world unless the condition of women is improved. And he has also stated in that it is impossible for a bird to fly on only one wing. Okay, and what exactly he has meant in this particular quote, he has stated that the relevance of skilling women to create a future-ready workforce of women is even more important today when India is gearing herself to become a global economic superpower. And what exactly I meant over this global economic superpower, that as India is proceeding to the concept which is basically referred as 4IR, that is the fourth industrial revolution. In that particular context, it becomes very much relevant that we need to talk about this concept of skilling women. Okay, so before I go into detail relating to how the skilling is going to help the women for addressing the various sustainable development goals, let us come up with some basic fact that what exactly is referred as gender digital divide. So this gender digital divide, and most of the panelists, they have also highlighted this particular concept to a certain extent. It is basically referred as the unequal opportunities for ICT use between the men and the women, which is related to social, political, economic, and cultural domains. It can also be defined as an underrepresentation of women in the ICT sector. So if you are taking into account a particular group where we take into account the ICT sector, so it is basically needed that we need to discuss in detail about this particular concept, which is basically related to gender digital divide. And UNESCO has also interpreted this particular concept as one of the most significant inequalities to be amplified by the digital revolution. And if you talk about this particular concept of ICT, this ICT or technological development or science and technology, this possesses an enormous power to bridge the gap that is existing relating to the concept of gender equality. And women can use this ICT as an empowerment tool, which can lead to gender equality. So studies have also stated that how this ICT is acting as an empowerment tool to lead to gender equality. So by recognizing the significance of ICT for women, United Nations have also placed this ICT as the center of its new sustainable development goals, for which it is needed that countries assuring to amplify the gender equitability related to access and uses for women. So similarly, one of the report which was come up in the year 2018 by the Broadband Commission for Sustainable Development, which has adopted a framework that is Target 25, connecting the other half, where they have stated that it commits to, among other things, affordable broadband services, proficiency in sustainable digital skills, and digital gender equality. So what exactly this concept is basically related to? This says that we need to have at least some access to the basic ICT infrastructure. And this particular slide is giving some picture relating to that particular aspect. But here what I'm trying to portray is the accessibility of mobile phone being a basic thing which is required for the woman to have the different information. So how we have proceeded in this particular aspect. So women having access to mobile phones. So this slide gives you some good picture that from 2015 to 16 to 2019-20, we have taken into account some states where it shows that there have been difference which is existing relating to the access of mobile phones by the women. But the question arises that why we haven't reached this 100%. So that particular issue has to be tackled through. And here, as we are happy with seeing the figures that though we have progressed, but progress has not been the pace at which it is expected. Okay. So now taking one more case, this is the report. This is something that I have taken from one of the report which was published by Deloitte, where here they have exclusively talked about education and employment gaps for girls and women. So this particular slide gives correct information about what is the picture of women and the girls. India has 120 million adolescent girls, out of which we can find that 3 million out of school girls. And this picture even becomes worse when we say that in the age group of 15 to 18, 39.4% girls have been dropped out of schools and colleges. And this again being further aggravated when we say that the female labor force participation rate, which is said to be 50% lower than that of the male counterpart. And this again being said that 95% of the women are mostly being engaged in the unorganized sector. So now this itself is a very huge problem, and that needs to be addressed seriously. And here comes the picture that we need to think about the concept of skilling, okay, and how the skilling is leading to sustainable development. So if there is skill development, definitely this is going to lead to personal development of the woman. Occupational competence definitely is going to be addressed. Women can also have one topic that is related to educational mobility, and all this thing having impact on the employability of the women, and this itself is going to address some of the sustainable development goals that the United Nations has said that we need to achieve by the end of 2030. Okay, so I will just try to look at what are these various sustainable development goals that can be addressed if we are thinking about the skilling of the women, which can be leading to women's empowerment. So some of the sustainable development goals that has been addressed over here, if you talk about the first sustainable development goals, whether it is no poverty, food security and nutrition, healthcare services, quality education, gender equality, economic growth and development, or we can think about what the other panelists have also mentioned relating to industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So all this as the basic topic relating to this particular panel, which is basically related to sustainable development goals and how this can be thought of when we are trying to skill or reskill or upgrade the skills of the women so that we can attain most of the sustainable development goals, and this being not restricted to the sustainable development goals that has been highlighted over here. Apart from that, we can also address the other sustainable development goals as mentioned by the United Nations. So with this, I end my presentation and I'm coming back to you, sir.
Okay, we are now almost at the close of the session. It's 12:47. So I would like to give each one of the panel members a chance to just state one initiative that you would like to focus on, which is implementable and something that you think is important to be done. I'll start with Dr. Geetalakshmi, and my question to her will be, what would be that one initiative which will take care of one problem that you mentioned, that was about dropout of girls, children. So just tell one initiative that you feel is something that needs to be done and can be done.
Sir, if you talk about the initiative which has been introduced by the government of India, whether it is related to Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, if we can further promote that, or awareness, if that can be created, more of awareness and the willingness of the women to send their girl children to the schools, if that can be created or that can be enhanced, I think much of the problems that can be addressed. That is what I think.
Thank you. Joyita, what would be your one action item out of, which will take care of some of the issues that you raised and some of the priority items that you focused on? One action item that you think would be the need of the hour?
I think industry coalition and government partnerships together. The reason I say is this is a very, very unique girl children focused program that Department of Science and Technology has taken forward, and IBM has happily partnered, which is called Vigyan Jyoti, to bring in women or girl children in science and technology with encouragements like scholarships and hostel facilities, inroads to technology, and so on. And of course, role modeling with other accomplished mentors or women in the field. So it would be my humble submission to make this suggestion that maybe industry and government coalition as an
Wonderful.
action item.
Over to Lalita ji. From your side, one initiative that you think will be timely and relevant today?
I completely agree with Joyita. We do need to have all stakeholders come together and work, and really look at propagating local role models to make young girls and women believe in themselves, and also their communities believe in themselves. So I would just second that. Yes.
Wonderful. So we come to Nidhi. From your side, one initiative that you think we should focus on?
No, definitely. I think, of course, if I had, one initiative to run across the country, of course, it would be anemia, which really needs to be tackled at a war footing level, I would say. And, if you look at the way anemia has gone up amongst women, young girls, I think that needs attention because that prohibits them from coming to mainstream anywhere. And one thing which I am personally very fond of, women in sports. Definitely we need to work at urban, rural, and all levels to be able to mainstream them in the sports agenda. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Archana, if you are there, there is one or two questions, but I think we are running out of time. Okay, so it's almost 12:55. We have exceeded a bit. So thanks to all of you for participating today, taking time off, and thanks to all of you for the great work you all are doing in your respective fields. I hope you found this session interesting. I hope you found in the short time we could come across with some ideas. And I would strongly suggest that in your own sphere, I think whatever you mentioned at one step, if it is possible, please implement it, because what is important in this country today is implementation of what we want to do. We need to act fast. We need to reach out to people. We need to bridge the gender inequality, and we need to really live up to the name of celebrating an International Women's Day. So thank you very much and have a great day. And may it be a happy Women's Day every day of your lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Archana,
Bye.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Good
thank
day.
you. Bye.